It's official. The men's and women's Money in the Bank ladder matches, as we found out on SmackDown last night, will be happening at the exact same time next Sunday during the Money in the Bank pay-per-view at the WWE Headquarters. I don't know how to feel about that personally. It sounds exciting in one respect, in that we've never seen it done before, but on the other hand, I feel like it's going to be one giant mess. Now, I feel like, well, first of all, there were rumors of this happening when PW Insider, I believe, was the first to report that we would be seeing the match, or matches rather, take place at the WWE Headquarters this year. They made it sound like in the report that they would be happening simultaneously. And part of me was thinking, oh, they would never do that. That would be just too much of a mess, just because you're having technically two matches happen at the same time. I mean, how do you follow the action? How do you keep up with everything? Because there's 6 people in each match. I mean, it's probably the best number. I mean, maybe, I don't know if 4 is the right amount. 6 would make sense just because you can't really have 4. I mean, I guess you could have 4 people in the match. They were supposed to, back in the 2012 men's Money in the Bank ladder match, it was Cena, Jericho, Big Show, Kane, and then they added The Miz at the last minute. So they had 5, which I think is the fewest amount of people they've ever had in one Money in the Bank ladder match. 6 is a good solid number. 8 is like, okay, they want to get more people in there. I get it. 4 from each brand. And then like 10 is just anything over 8, in my opinion, is pure overkill. 6 is a good solid number, especially in this type of environment. When you have 12 people, 6 men, 6 women from Raw and SmackDown respectively, going at it at the same time, I do not know how this is going to pan out. I'm very interested to find out, for one thing. I'll say that much. If nothing else, it's a very intriguing concept, and I'm reserving my, judgment on it until we see it in action, until we see it in motion. Because it could very well turn out to be a complete disaster to have 2 matches happening at the exact same time. But we'll see. I can see the defense of it happening at the same time, in the sense that they may not want to film 2 of the exact same match at the same building back to back. It's not a time-consuming thing, but in the sense that, you can only see people climb the stairs so many times. So in having it happen at the same time, you're having the men's and women's matches happen simultaneously. You can have, just happen all at once, as opposed to see the men fight in the hallways and in the stairwells, and then make it to the, top of the building and fight on the ladders, all this other shit, as opposed to then the women doing the exact same thing. So having it happen all at the same time, I can see the positive in doing that, but at the same time, though, I feel like it might be just one giant mess. I guess time will tell. We'll find out next Sunday at the Money in the Bank ladder match pay-per-view. But that being said, this is my SmackDown review for Friday, May 1st, 2020, the first episode of SmackDown in the month of May. Overall, I thought it was a decent show. I maintain that SmackDown overall, not just during the, empty arena era, but ever really since they arrived on Fox 6 months ago, the show has been completely abysmal overall. Really not much of note happening. I did think the show was decent just because it felt streamlined, it felt focused, minimal filler, which I guess is usually the case with the show, but I felt like everything on this show specifically served a purpose, had to do with the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, and there weren't any great matches or anything. I thought overall it was a pretty, a mundane show, but when we're going off of recent SmackDown standards, I thought it was decent. So we'll start from the beginning here and work our way to the main event, kicking off with the opener between Daniel Bryan and King Corbin. Now, I thought the promos they cut beforehand were very, very good, specifically Daniel Bryan, who had brought up how it was the Money in the Bank ladder match that allowed him to win the World Heavyweight Championship back in December of 2011, cash it in, become world champion, which also, as he mentioned in this promo, gave birth to the Yes movement soon after at WrestleMania. I mean, he was already doing the Yes when he was the world champion, but it wasn't until, coincidentally enough, after he lost the World Heavyweight Championship that the Yes stuff, really started to catch on. King Corbin came out, Baron Corbin, whatever. Like I said last week, I fucking hate the King shit. It's time for him to retire that nonsense. But anyway, he came out, he cut a promo saying how he too won the men's Money in the Bank ladder match 3 years ago at this point. It feels like a lifetime ago. But he too won the men's Money in the Bank briefcase. Unlike Bryan, though, unsuccessfully cashed it in, was unable to become world champion. He blamed it on here. I don't think he mentioned John Cena's name, but it was at that time Cena who prevented him from cashing in successfully and becoming the champion. So, which I think at that point he probably should have, in my opinion. I think Baron was ready for the main event back in mid-2017. I guess WWE thought otherwise. I would hate to see him win it again, at least as the King Corbin shit is still going on. The King of the Ring nonsense is just pure garbage. But if he wins it again, I just don't think that's the best outcome considering who else is involved. But I like the fact that they brought up the history here, how they are former Money in the Bank winners. I felt like there might have been someone else who had won the briefcase before in the match. Maybe not. I thought maybe it was supposed to be Dolph Ziggler, who ended up losing on the show to Otis, spoiler alert. But yeah, these two had formerly won the Money in the Bank ladder match a number of years ago. They then had their match, which was actually pretty good. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the first ever one-on-one encounter between the two. And I've always liked the idea of a Bryan Corbin feud, just because we've never seen it before. I think Corbin was on Raw when Bryan came back to the ring a few years ago. So they never had the chance to feud. I think it's just a much better idea of a feud as opposed to Corbin and Reigns, which dragged on forever and it really never felt like they had great chemistry in the ring. I thought the Royal Rumble Falls Count Anywhere match was good. Everything else, though, was completely flat and no one gave a shit. But I think Corbin traditionally has worked well, has worked a lot better with the smaller guys. Chad Gable comes to mind. Austin Aries in NXT comes to mind. Samoa Joe, he worked well with in NXT, but that might be the only exception. I feel like when he faces people his size, people like Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns, it's just not exciting. But he thrives when he's up against the smaller, better competitors. Because Corbin's good in the ring, I would argue. I mean, Bryan's a lot better, of course. But when he has someone in there that he can really play off of, like a Bryan or a Gable or a Sami Zayn, they had some really good matches in NXT and on the main roster. I think that's where he really thrives. So I thought this was a good match. I hated the non-finish. I thought that was fucking lazy. I hate when they do this shit, when they devote 15 minutes to a good match and then have it end on a non-finish. But they probably didn't want Bryan losing so close to the pay-per-view. They didn't want Corbin losing so close to the pay-per-view. This did serve to set up. So what Corbin did to get himself disqualified was that he threw one of the dumb ladders that was positioned around the stage area to kind of promote the ladder match coming up. He hit Bryan with one of the ladders, so that's what happened. But that did serve to set up next week's 6-man tag team match. So if nothing else, it was successful in that respect. And that next week we get Corbin, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Cesaro, who are bouncing around from being Sami Zayn's lackeys to now King Corbin's. Because Sami Zayn apparently, reportedly, will be out for the foreseeable future. It's his choice to not appear on the shows. So why they kept the Intercontinental Championship on the guy at WrestleMania, I don't know. They had to have known ahead of time that, Zayn was appearing on the empty arena shows before WrestleMania. He was at WrestleMania, and now I guess he just doesn't want to show up, which is good. It's great that they're listening to the performers. If they don't want to be there, they shouldn't have to be there. I feel like Kevin Owens might be in a similar position. It made sense for Kevin Owens to win at WrestleMania. I know he's not on Raw now. It did make sense for him to win. I know Rollins is now the new number one contender to the WWE Championship. So he probably should have won at Mania if he was always going to go for the belt after Mania. But in the case of Sami Zayn, the guy's a champion and he won't be around. It's not, a necessity to have Sami Zayn as champion. It's not like, there's more story to tell. And I guess there is with him and Bryan. They can always rekindle that rivalry down the road. But if he's choosing to sit out the rest of these shows until the pandemic is over and they go back to having normal shows, I'll get to the whole show thing in a second. But if he's waiting it out until it's safer, it might not be for another month or two. So they probably should have just taken the belt off of him at WrestleMania. That might not be a WWE, that might not be their fault. Sami Zayn might have said after the fact, hey, I don't want to be at these shows anymore post-WrestleMania. Whatever. I'm not exactly sure what the case might be. But he won't be a part of SmackDown, reportedly for the foreseeable future. Another thing I should mention before we go any further here, like I said, we are getting Bryan and Gulak and a partner of their choosing next week against Corbin, Nakamura, and Cesaro. Before we go any further, though, I should say this, that it was reported, I think I saw it from Wrestle News, WrestlingNews.co or whatever. It was a pretty reliable source, not just them, but I had seen other sites back it up, that the Florida shows might be able to go back to having fans in attendance as soon as next week. Now, I'm not in favor of that. The whole WWE is essential bullshit. It's obviously bullshit. It's a double-edged sword just because I am also of the mindset that if they do no shows, is wrestling essential? No, it's not. But in the sense that, they also should not be filming every single week. I'm glad they kind of cut down on that. I believe they already taped next week's Raw and maybe next week's SmackDown and next week's NXT, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, that whole shit about limiting it down and it being essential, it's obviously not essential. But if they want to run shows and they want to save money, because if they don't run shows and the performers aren't making money because they're not making that TV money, I would assume, because they probably, if the networks are thinking if you can run shows, then do them, then they might have to release a lot more people. I get it from that standpoint as well. From the argument that I'm trying to make here is against the idea that they need fans of these shows, which I think is absolute bullshit. I guess we'll see what happens with it. It was reported, again, I think yesterday or on Thursday, that these Florida shows, maybe not just for WWE, but for like the MMA shows, boxing, AEW, whatever, might be able to go back to having fans there. At least, I think at 25% capacity is what the report said. I think this came straight from a Florida official, either the governor or some head honcho over in Florida, who had said that shows might be able to go back to having fans in attendance, albeit at a 25% capacity rate or whatever, which I think is completely stupid, at least right now. I'm not saying you can't do that down the road. I just think doing that as soon as next week. I mean, yeah, it has been a while. This thing has been going on for close to 2 months now, which feels like forever, but I think they can't afford to wait a little longer. They don't need fans of the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. I'm not even exactly sure how that would fucking work. Do you take everyone's temperature when they come in the building? Do you sell tickets, like 25 tickets? I mean, we're talking about the fucking Performance Center here, which already fits 100 people. If you're talking about 25% of a capacity of people in the building, because you want to social distance and have people sit 6 feet apart, whatever, you're talking, 20 people anyway? It would be no different than in any indie show that you would ever see at a fucking high school gymnasium. So I don't really see the point in doing that. I feel like it's completely pointless. I don't think that's going to, just because they have the option to have people in the building, I don't think they should capitalize on that. Honestly, this is just me personally. Yeah, the empty arena shows, it sucks from an atmosphere standpoint. I think the main event on the show really suffered from not having fans, Otis and Dolph Ziggler. But just because they have the option to have fans there doesn't mean they absolutely should have fans there. So again, more on that as it develops. There might be more details coming out in the next couple days on Monday. Again, from what I read, they might be able to have fans in attendance as soon as like next week, which again is way too fucking soon. I think it's way too dangerous to be doing that shit. Maybe by the end of this month we'll reevaluate, or early June. I feel like that's fair. Right now, though, I think it's completely ridiculous. So also on the show, we had Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman engage in another verbal exchange over the Titantron. Braun was in the ring. Bray did a Firefly Funhouse episode on the screen. Nothing really new here. And like I've said before, I like the idea of these two feuding because, A, we've never seen it before, above all else, because they tend to rerun the same rivalries over and over and fucking over again. But for these two, I mean, again, they have the history. They came up in the Wyatt family together. I mean, Bray really recruited Braun into the group. He wasn't an original member of the Wyatt family. He was brought in like 2 or 3 years after the family already started in NXT and on the main roster. So they have the history there, but I feel like they need to expand on that more. Yeah, the root of the rivalry is there, but they need to add more intensity to the feud. Add more intensity, make Braun want to face Bray Wyatt, aside from just playing mind games with him. Again, the verbal exchanges are good. It's better than having a feud for absolutely no reason. Like, it would be better than doing Braun versus fucking Nakamura for absolutely no reason. Because I guess they feuded a couple months ago, but Nakamura's a fucking loser. And Bray technically won at WrestleMania. It wasn't really an official match, but I guess it was either way, when he beat John Cena in the Firefly Funhouse match. There's a reason for the rivalry to be happening. Bray wants his Universal Championship back. It makes sense. The issue is that you need to build upon that. You have the foundation of the feud. Now move forward with it. Have Bray do something dastardly. Have them attack each other. Granted, they are going face-to-face next week, but I feel like it might be more of the same. So maybe they'll get to the next stage of the feud after Money in the Bank, when they have Bray, the Firefly Funhouse version of Bray lose to Braun. I'd assume they continue the feud with The Fiend going after the championship, probably losing as well at the subsequent show in June, which we don't know what that's going to be yet. But yeah, we need something more here. This wasn't bad. Again, I'm just saying long-term, in terms of next week and the week after that, we need more to this feud than what we're just getting so far. It's a good foundation, but they need to build upon that and give me a reason to want to see Braun face Bray. We then saw Sheamus in action, beating Leon Ruff, who has been in action on Main Event and Raw in recent weeks. I think he lost to Aleister Black twice, and maybe someone else who I'm not remembering right now, but we have seen him before in WWE programming. He's one of the few jobbers they brought in who isn't under contract, I believe, unless I'm mistaken here. I don't think he's under contract to WWE. He does work a lot of Evolve shows. Maybe he just lives in the area. I don't know. But he lost to Sheamus here in under 2 minutes. So Sheamus knew even before the match started that, hey, you guys are going to cut me off again. My celebration is going to get cut off by another Jeff Hardy video package. So at least he knew he was coming. He was staring a hole right through Michael Cole at ringside on commentary, which was hilarious. They then did the part 4 of the Jeff Hardy redemption story. This was all about the comeback, him getting injured about a year ago, which was back in April. That was over 1 year ago, which is insane when you think about it. So he got hurt like literally right after winning the SmackDown Tag Team titles with Matt Hardy. He said at the time, I'm going to be out. It was like an injured knee or whatever, that he would be out for 6 to 9 months. And he was out a lot longer, of course, if he's just coming back now. Now, granted, he was back 2 months ago on SmackDown. He worked that one-off match with Baron Corbin, which was completely pointless in retrospect. If they weren't going to do anything with him, at WrestleMania. But yeah, he was out for about a year. He was clear to compete. He announced on Backstage 2 months ago, came back for a one-off match, and he just really wants to prove that this one last run is worth it, that his demons are behind him, and all this other shit. And they showed his mug shots from 2009, 2011, even 2018. They didn't mention the most recent run-ins with the law that he had and back in 2019. I think at least 1 or 2 of them, maybe 3. He definitely got arrested in 2018, obviously, as we saw from the mugshot. But he definitely had some sort of legal issue in 2019 as well. I know that for a fact. I mean, he has a court date. He was supposed to have a court date the day after WrestleMania. Then, of course, due to all this shit, it got delayed and whatever. But, yeah, so they didn't show that, which they probably should have, but whatever. I guess you show one mugshot, it really, I guess, counts for everything maybe in their eyes. But Jeff Hardy did say, I guess it's worth bringing up here, he did say to Corey Graves on the After the Bell podcast, I didn't listen to the whole thing, I just kind of listened to the highlights on the WWE YouTube channel. He said a couple things. One, that he wants to face Bray Wyatt, which would make sense since they're both on SmackDown. I would love to see that at some point. I think the creativity there would be cool. He wants to bring back the face paint, which he didn't do, I don't think, last year with Matt. I don't remember him doing the face paint shit with Matt, but he did do it before that, though, when he was on his own in 2018, early 2019, he was doing the face paint. He said he wants to bring that back. Didn't mention anything about the new theme song. I hope they do bring that, not the new theme song, but the No More Words song that he was using before he left in 2009. He didn't mention that here, but he did, or on the podcast from what I heard, but he did confirm on the bump like a month ago that he was bringing it back. So they played the Hardy Boys theme song in the video package here for Jeff, but hopefully they use that song next week. And it's not like, fans won't recognize it. Like, there's no one there, so who gives a shit, You might as well just start using it now. If there's any good time to start using that song and get people familiar again with that song, it would be right now when there's no fans. So when they go back to having fans, people know that's his theme song. He mentioned that he wants to have a feud with Brock Lesnar. He actually brought up how Brock, I think Jeff was Brock's first opponent in WWE. If not the first opponent, one of his first opponents. I know he had a handicap match with Matt against Brock at the Backlash pay-per-view, I believe in 2002. So he was like Brock's first feud. So to revisit that all these years later, I mean, his body's all beat up, so it might not be the best idea. But from a storyline standpoint, that'd be pretty cool. We have yet to see, or at least haven't seen, Brock versus Jeff in a very long time. And Brock is running out of fresh feuds in WWE, so I wouldn't mind that. The only issue is that Jeff's on SmackDown and Brock's on Raw. So Brock's going to have to go back to SmackDown, which we probably know won't happen. He was there for all of 2 weeks, literally, about a year ago, not a year ago, like 6 months ago in the draft. He got drafted to SmackDown, then he quit SmackDown right after the Kane match when he beat Cain Velasquez at Crown Jewel, then he went right back to Raw. So I'm not sure what the point of that was, aside from just the bump of rating on SmackDown for the first month on Fox. Maybe Jeff goes to Raw in the next shakeup, who knows. I like him on SmackDown personally, so I thought I would bring that up here. Jeff is back on SmackDown next week. I assume that's where they set up him and Sheamus for the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. Speaking of Money in the Bank, we had our first of 2 qualifiers on the show. This was for the final remaining spot in the women's Money in the Bank ladder match, Carmella versus Mandy Rose. The match was no good, specifically because they had Sonya Deville come out like a halfway through to cut a promo, which... So as a match, it sucked, but I thought to further the feud between Mandy and Sonya as a tool to do that, I thought it was great. I thought Sonya's promo was actually excellent, and she brought up here in her promo, she's like, Mandy, I thought I would come out here because it's a very, special time of the year for us, and I'm like, oh shit, where is this going? Like, I'm sure people got their hopes up for like some sort of like anniversary of when they first like kissed or some shit, but no, unfortunately not for people that were hoping for that. Instead, it was actually what she was referring to was how she gave away, which I completely forgot about, by the way. I'm glad they brought this up here. I feel like, I doubt the creative team would have remembered this, to be honest with you. And I remember everything. So the creative team, if I don't remember, they probably didn't remember either. But I assume Sonya and Mandy probably wanted to incorporate this in the promo themselves. But Sonya brought up how Sonya gave away her Money in the Bank ladder match spot last year to Mandy. And I don't think that was ever explained why. You would think, oh, they're going to tease tension, Mandy's going to win the briefcase, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. I mean, they've teased tension between these two like a million times over the last 2 or 3 years. So I'm not surprised that went nowhere. But that did indeed happen. I do remember that. I don't remember if Sonya won the spot or if she just, if she was just given the spot and she just gave it away. I don't remember. But I do remember that she gave up the spot to Mandy. And she also brought up how she tried to help Mandy win the briefcase. How she ascended the ladder for Mandy, basically handed to her, and she still lost. I think Bayley ended up, she was the one who climbed the ladder, won the briefcase, and she ended up cashing in on that same show, which was amazing. I was there. I've actually been at the last 2 Money in the Bank pay-per-views in Chicago and then Hartford, respectively. Unfortunately, I can't be there this year due to the circumstances, but technically I am in the same state as the Money in the Bank pay-per-view for the last 3 years. But anyway, so last year they had Mandy almost win with Sonya's help. She didn't. Sonya brought that up here, so because Sonya was nice enough to give up her spot to Mandy, she thought in retaliation she would cost Mandy her opportunity to qualify for this year's Women's Money in the Bank ladder match, which she did. Carmella took advantage of the distraction, super kicked Mandy, won the match. Again, the match itself was complete shit, but I thought as a tool to further that feud, it was well done. They brawled afterward. They didn't announce Sonya versus Mandy for the pay-per-view. I assume that's where they're going with this. Because Otis, again, spoiler alert, is in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. So I think this would have been the perfect place to do the mixed tag team match at the pay-per-view. Maybe at the June one or on SmackDown next week, who knows. But they are, I would hope, they're going to do Mandy and Sonya at the pay-per-view unless Dolph gets involved in the ladder match and Mandy and Otis, or rather Mandy and Sonya get involved, who knows. But I thought this worked, though. I thought this worked. Carmella, I'm not sure if she's a face or a heel. I know I brought this up before. She was coming across like a bitch a couple weeks ago when she was talking to Carmella about being in the ladder match and she had to focus. Did I say Carmella? I meant Dana Brooke. I think I said Dana Brooke, where she wanted her to focus on the tag team title opportunity they had last week, which they lost. And she was the one who got pinned. She looked frustrated afterwards. So I would assume they are setting up some sort of a heel turn for Carmella, if it hasn't already technically happened. I don't know. It seems like they're going in that direction. And she has won the briefcase before, so I guess it would make sense for her to be in it. But the women's ladder match, as of right now, not shaping up to be too great. They have Carmella in there, who isn't great. I mean, Carmella, I like Carmella, but don't really need to see her in the ladder match. Nia Jax is just fucking terrible. I'm not shocked that she's in there. She just came back, whatever makes sense. But she's just fucking awful. They also have, Asuka's in there, Shayna, which is cool. Lacey, I like Lacey. I would rather have Sasha in there over Lacey, but it is what it is. And Dana Brooke just makes absolutely no sense either. I would rather have Naomi in there. So a very bizarre women's ladder match. And honestly, maybe filming it the same timing as the men's match, maybe filming it simultaneously with the men's match is for the best. If that's going to be the lineup for the women's match, maybe doing them at the same time is just absolutely for the best. We then had the New Day take on the Forgotten Sons for the first time ever. Not that it really matters. This match went on for a while. Thankfully, unlike the Corbin-Bryan match, they actually delivered a clean finish. I thought it was a fine match, nothing great. It was decent. Miz and Morrison were on commentary. They're obviously giving Forgotten Sons a win here, and then Lucha House Party the win over Miz and Morrison last week. I thought it was a way to split up Miz and Morrison. Thank God that's not the case. Instead, it seems like they're setting up a fatal 4-way tag team title match, which they recapped the whole segment from last week on this show too. They probably did that for a reason, because they're setting up a 4-way for the Money in the Bank pay-per-view between Lucha House Party, Forgotten Sons, New Day, and Miz and Morrison for the tag team titles. I would rather have the Usos in there. I have no idea why they're not. The Lucha House Party are just fucking losers. I appreciate the effort, but I'm not going to take them seriously. And the Forgotten Sons, I'm glad they won here. They just debuted, over New Day. It made sense. Not really. New Day is the better team. But Forgotten Sons, they just debuted. To have them lose to the New Day so soon would be like when Sanity got called up and they lost within 2 weeks, which was so fucking dumb. They gave up on them on night one. And Sanity was better than Forgotten Sons. I wouldn't have cared too much if the Forgotten Sons lost here, but they are clearly setting up some sort of a 4-way tag team title match for the pay-per-view coming up next weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, we've seen so many multi-team tag team title matches on this show in the last couple of months that this is really nothing new. But whatever. I guess it's better than Miz and Morrison versus New Day again. And then we had the main event, Otis knocking off Dolph Ziggler, like I said earlier, to qualify for the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. It was a good match, but like I said, I feel like of all the matches on this show, this one suffered the most from not having a crowd. Because Otis, even before this whole pandemic happened, he was really over. People were really digging Otis. It would have been cool to have the crowd here to kind of rally behind Otis and, tell that story of the underdog qualifying, but unfortunately we didn't have that. It was a good match otherwise, though. Otis is in the match. Of the two, I would much rather have Otis in there. Dolph's already won it before. He ain't going to win it again, clearly. And it's a good little story to tell. If they're not going to do the mixed tag team match of the pay-per-view, I'm totally fine with Otis being in the ladder match. And he won clean, too, which is key. He won at WrestleMania 2, but that was after the whole distraction from Sonya and Mandy. Sonya and Mandy were not around ringside for this match. It was a clean finish with Otis winning completely clean. It's still fucking Ziggler. Everyone beats Dolph Ziggler. But hey, he's a former world champion. You can't take that away from the guy. So I thought it was a decent match. And that closed out the show. So they advertised a bunch of stuff for next week, which I appreciate. They're doing more of that with Raw and with SmackDown NXT. They've always kind of done it with NXT, but to do it with SmackDown, I think is key to give people a reason to. Oh shit, I thought there was a fucking bug on my leg. It's actually my phone. Sorry about that. They're actually setting up a bunch of stuff for next week, which is good. NXT's been doing that for a while now. Raw and SmackDown, not really, but hey, they're booking in advance, and probably because they have the shows already written out because they're filming them at the same time as this show. I think next week's SmackDown was filmed either yesterday too or a couple days ago. I think they're already in the can, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know if the pay-per-view is going to be live. It might be, but at this point, does it even matter? It doesn't need to be live. No spoilers are going to get out. No one gives a shit. It's fucking Money in the Bank, Just film it in advance. That's my opinion. And they already have, I think the ladder matches are already set. They already have the ladder matches set for the pay-per-view. They already filmed them at the headquarters, I believe. So there is that. They did advertise for Raw, Drew McIntyre versus Murphy, as well as that last chance gauntlet match to determine Apollo Crews' replacement in the match. I guess he can't go. I'm not sure if that's legit or not. I thought it was a storyline, but maybe not. I guess we'll find out on Monday. But for SmackDown next week, like I said earlier, it's Bryan and Gulak and a partner of their choosing versus Corbin, Nakamura, and Cesaro. Braun and Bray face off. Jeff Hardy returns, and a tag team match pitting Bayley and Banks against Lacey and Tamina. They did have some sort of segment backstage on the show. I forgot to mention that. Tamina was getting interviewed with, she was, encountering Sasha, whatever. Bayley and Banks tried to jump Tamina. Lacey came to Tamina's aid. Why that's a thing, I don't know. And that set up the tag team match for next week. So simple storytelling. I don't give a fuck about Tamina being in the title picture, but it is what it is. I guess they're trying, so it's better than nothing. I think it still sucks, but they're clearly killing time before they get to Sasha and Bayley at SummerSlam or before then, who knows. But anyway, I thought this was a decent show. I hate to say, that it was bad or, I think SmackDown on the whole has been a pretty dull show. But on the bright side, it was slightly better this week, if nothing else, and I thought the build to the Money in the Bank pay-per-view was well done. If nothing else, it was successful from that standpoint. So, that's going to do it, guys. Be sure to like the video if you're listening on YouTube, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. A ton of content coming up in the next couple of days from Dark Side of the Ring reviews, and a ton more, maybe even a live stream in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that. But we should be back here next week with another SmackDown audio review breaking down the final show before the Money in the Bank pay-per-view next Sunday. Until then, guys, enjoy your month of May, enjoy your weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.